forbid, winking at them. He sent a silent message. Here was a man who knew things. He smiled back at Esby, who shared his bed furs on occasion, and watched appreciatively, along with every one of his men, as she walked away from them, hips swaying from side to side. Another thing men did when bored and having no wars to fight, and especially when drinking, was talk about women. "Tell me true, Ivak," demanded Håkon the horse, a name he'd been given because of a face so long he could lick the bottom of a bucket and still see over the rim, not because of other bodily attributes. Håkon was a master at swordplay if ever there was one, a soldier you'd want at your back in battle, but an irksome oaf when drunken, and he was halfway there already. "There must have been times when your lance failed to rise to the occasion. It happens to the best of men betimes." Ivak exchanged a quick glance with his best friend, Cirque the Silent, who sat beside him on the bench. Cirque, a man of few words, did not need to speak for Ivak to know that he was thinking, "Here it comes." Ivak tapped his chin with a forefinger, as if actually giving the query consideration. He could feel Cirque shaking with silent laughter. "Nay, it never has, though there have been times I've had to take a vow of celibacy to give it a rest." He cupped himself for emphasis. "For how long?" scoffed Ingolf, his chief archer. A grin twitched at Ingolf's hugely mustached upper lip, knowing when Ivak was about to pull a jest. "Oh, a good long time. 2 days at most," Ivak admitted. Everyone except Håkon found amusement in his jest, including Kuga, the young squire he'd been training of late. Gazing at Ivak in wonder, Kuga blurted out, "Did it hurt?" "The celibacy or the excess?" Ivak asked, trying to keep a straight face. A blush crept over Kuga's still unwhiskered face as he sensed having made a fool of himself. Ivak patted Kuga on the shoulder. Håkon glared at him, his question not gaining the results he'd wanted. A fight. Ivak returned Håkon's glare, his with a silent warning that Håkon thankfully heeded. Håkon stood, tossing his horn to the rushes, and stomped off, hopefully to sleep himself sober. Ingolf took a long draught from his horn of ale, cleared his throat, and proclaimed with a chuckle, "To my mind, a man's cock is like a brass urn." "Oh, good gods," Ivak muttered. "How true." Cirque encouraged Ingolf and nudged Ivak with an elbow to share in his mirth. "Now hear me out," Ingolf said, stroking his mustache. "Everyone knows that brass needs polishing from time to time, and mine is especially shiny these days since I got me a second wife," one of the men contributed. Ingolf scowled at the interruption and continued. "Of course, a one-handed rub will do to ease the throb, but best it is if the polishing is done in the moist folds of a female sheath's chokehold." "I don't understand," Kuga said to Ivak. "'Tis a mystery," Ivak replied with dry humor. Ingolf, who fancied himself a master storyteller, was on a roll now. 'Twas best to let him finish. "The thing about brass is that too much rubbing, and it loses its luster. Even grows pits." Ingolf pretended to shiver. "Pits? Like a peach?" Kuga whispered. "Nay, like warts," Ivak told the boy. "You do not want warts down there, believe you me." "Even worse," Ingolf told Kuga. "Tainted oil in the sheath can spoil all it touches."